Hey YouTube, Halo Guy here. Today I have for you an update on one of the biggest issues currently infesting Infinite. That is of course the desync. This issue single-handedly causes so many issues in this game, all the way from phasing through enemies to double backsmacks to getting shot round corners. Basically, if something happens in this game and you're left wondering how is that even possible, it's probably due to the desync. Luckily, we're getting some clarification on why the desync is there and what they're going to be doing to mitigate its effects. So sit back, strap in and get ready, because we have a lot of information to sift through for this one. This information is coming straight from the lead engineer of the Sandbox team, Richard Watson, and I'll leave the full post in the description if you want to go through everything yourself. But he's going to be going over common network issues people are experiencing, discuss plans to mitigate the issues, and go over some quick FAQs and clear misunderstandings about the way things work. So let's just get into it. There are 4 issues that are going to be talked over today, which are being shot round corners, shot and melee radius tracing, phasing through enemies in close quarters combat, and what's being called permanent desynchronization. We'll start off by going over the being shot round corners, which is probably the most common issue I run into because it seems to happen every time I run round corners while being shot. They seem to always manage to get at least one extra shot landed when I'm past the corner. So Richard says the issue stems from what's called latency compensation, which is how they handle the delay between you, the dedicated servers, and any other players in the match. Basically, the server takes everyone's point of view of the game and configures a master version, which will be what the actual server sees. The way the server works out the server's point of view is by favouring the shooter's version of events, meaning whatever happens on the shooter screen, the server will try to emulate that on its side. This means that when you land a shot with, say, the BR, the server will grant you that shot. How this works is when you fire your gun, the shot is simulated on your Xbox or PC, so you will see all the effects of the shields flaring, the hit marker noise, etc. Now, as you shoot, your Xbox or PC will send a message that you shot to the server, and when the server receives these details, it will execute the shot on the server and output the data to everyone's local version of the match. So if the server fired the projectile the same way that the shooter fired, it would cause issues, as the time it took for the information that you shot to go from your Xbox or PC to the server, it would mean that you would need to lead your shots, and the amount you would need to lead would depend on the latency to the server, leading to a very inconsistent game. Why this isn't an issue in past Halo games still continues to elude me, but what do I know, I'm not a server engineer. So basically, whatever a shooter sees on their screen will happen on the server side, but it does take time for that information to reach the server and then output to the target. This results in a small delay between the shooter shooting and the target being shot. And it's this delay which causes cases of being shot around corners, because on the shooter screen you haven't reached the corner yet, and by the time you get behind the cover, the game is only just sending out the information to you that you've been shot. Furthermore, if the shooter has a really high latency, say above 100 milliseconds, then they're going to be playing the game 100 milliseconds behind the server, making it take longer for the server to register the hit on the target. The higher the latency, the more exaggerated these effects become. We then get some examples to better visualise everything. The latency experienced from a shot is derived from the following calculation: shooter latency to server plus shooter command buffer plus server processing time, which can be anywhere between 16 to 33 milliseconds depending on the tick rate of the server, plus the target's latency to the server. The first 3 values is how long it takes for the server to perform your input, and the last value is how long it then takes for the server to send your input to the target. The command buffer stems from variability in your internet connection. A good connection would result in maximum of 60 milliseconds delay, but a bad connection could be exponentially more, depending on how many frames on the server passes. So let's get into the visual examples which assume a perfect 0 millisecond command buffer. We're going to examine the being shot round corners phenomenon first. Here we have the shooter's view and the target's view if there was no latency. Of course, that'll not happen in an online match, although it would be nice if it did. So in our first example, we see both the shooter and the target on 33 milliseconds of ping, which is about as good as I ever get here in Scotland. So how the total latency is calculated is by taking half the shooter's ping plus the server's processing time plus half the target's ping, which will be 50 milliseconds delay from you shooting to the target being shot. And this is the target's position by the time they are shot. Still visible, but not as visible as when the shooter actually shot their gun. But it can be believable regardless, so let's look at some more non-ideal circumstances which do happen a little too often for my liking. Let's assume the shooter has 33 milliseconds of ping and the target has 100 milliseconds of ping. The formula will be as so, with a total of 83.33 milliseconds total latency, and the target's torso is completely behind the cover but will still have a shot registered on them. Now let's assume the shooter has 150 milliseconds of ping and the target has 33 milliseconds of ping. The formula will look like so, giving a total latency of 108.33 milliseconds, and as you can see, the target is completely around the corner in this case. So all it really takes is for one person to have a non-ideal ping for this phenomenon to occur, and even with the ideal 33 milliseconds of ping, there's still a sizable delay, making the target further around the corner than they should be on the shooter's point of view. Now, add boost slides, thrusts, repulsors and grapples in the mix, and even in ideal situations, this issue would still occur every single time. So what are 343 going to do to mitigate this issue? As of yesterday, they've increased priority of low ping in the matchmaking process. This should help match you with people inside of your region, giving you a lower ping more often. The services team is also taking additional steps to help ensure we can have quality matches with players from our respective regions more often. They've also blocked geo-filtering, since that was impacting players' pings in-game when multiple regions did match with one another. If these changes don't give desired results, 343 say that a server selection like an MCC and search preferences like in every other Halo game will be added to better tune the matchmaking based on user preference. And since it's both parties' network quality that determines the game desync, 343 will be adding ways to monitor everyone's ping in the match via the scoreboard, and will be implementing ways of letting the player know if their connection is trash, even if they don't have network statistics turned on. Next issue to go over is the shot and melee registration not taking effect. This happens when there is a discrepancy between the shooter and the server's point of view. But as I said before, the shooter's view should always be used, so why does this even happen? Well, there's three main causes outlined. The first cause is when a player performs an action, then the server performs it, but the result from the server performing it is different from the result from the player performing it. This causes your version of events to diverge from the server's version of events. Now, they do believe there are certain bugs that they can address to improve this issue, as it shouldn't be happening based on how they have the servers operating. The second main cause is a lack of bandwidth. There's a lot of data to be sent from players to the servers and vice versa in one tick, so the game will only send out information deemed important at a given time. The game determines players shooting or being shot and your own Spartan data to be the highest priority. Issue is, if a lot of players are being shot and shooting simultaneously, some information may be dropped. This causes issues, especially in bigger 12v12 BTB matches where a lot of players are engaging one another at the same time. The last main cause is the latency in the simulation, which occurs in situations where players would expect to trade or win a close battle but actually die. The issue stems from the time it takes for you to be told you have died. So you will die on the server before you die locally on your Xbox or PC, and in that window of time, all of your shots you fire will be disregarded, since you should be dead according to the server. Now, melees have a special code path that allows them to register even after you have died on the server. And to mitigate this issue, there will be an update coming in the future to improve the bandwidth usage to squeeze more data into each tick of the game server. Player reports are also a big help to 343, as they can track down the root of the problem and get them sorted without having to do too much rigorous testing on their end. It's also been advised that PC players set the simulation quality to ultra, as this controls the amount of time they give to the systems that correct determination errors with the player. The CPU usage is apparently negligible, but does help a lot, so it will be worth it to turn it all the way up to ultra. There's also an update in the backlog to give shots after you've died on a server but still alive locally, much like how the melees work. Next up, we have the missing enemy collision. This causes the player to phase through enemies in close quarters combat melee encounters. This shouldn't be happening, as enemy collision is turned on, so there is an underlying issue here to explore. Due to the latency we went into detail earlier in this video, movements made locally take time to reach the server, making the version of the match different in the server than on your local machine. So by the time the server processes the movement, there could be a player directly on top of you. If there wasn't any latency compensation, this would result in rubber banding when near other players, as you shouldn't be able to walk through them, which the server thinks you have done, but you didn't in your version of the events. The melee lunge is a challenging case, as you will have two players moving towards locations that are actually where the player they were targeting were in the past. There's a simple diagram to explain this. Each player started inside their coloured circles but are strafing in opposite directions from each other, but they still see each other in their respective circles. When they both lunge to melee towards each other, They go towards the circles, hit each other, but then seemingly phase through each other in the process. In reality, this is what's happening. The green player sees enemy go diagonally towards where the purple player thinks they are situated and vice versa, causing a second of confusion. Ever been in a melee encounter, then the enemy disappears and you're both spinning around looking for each other? Well, this is what's going on. Same with double backsmacks. You both see each other as facing away from each other, but since the server always prioritizes hits over position, you both get the backsmack kill. To help combat this, 343 are working on improving the player collision system, and the overall latency reduction they are doing should help reduce this effect, as the closer both players' versions of events are to each other, the less weird things will happen in combat. Lastly, we have the permanent desync issue. Personally, I've never actually experienced this, but I have seen clips of it happening. Usually what happens is, when there is desync, the game will correct it by rubber banding you back, which happens to me all the time when I mantle an edge. I will climb up, but then fall back down. This is because the server decided I wasn't close enough to perform the mantle, and so pulled me back to where it thought I should be. The permanent desync happens when the server doesn't detect you are out of sync and doesn't correct it. Like I said, pretty rare, but some people have found a way to consistently pull it off in certain scenarios, which has helped 343 to mitigate the issue, and a patch should be on the way in the near future. Now, onto the quick FAQs. The server tick rate is 60Hz for Arena and 30Hz for BTB. Camping co-op will also run at 30Hz when that drops. Shots missed in theatre mode due to the latency compensation the server does. If there was no compensation, then what you actually see in theatre would be the outcome in the game. Theatre is the server's version of events without any compensation, as you would miss your shots even though it looks like you should have hit them when you're playing. And we're at the end of this post. A very juicy blog post, but really happy with the level of transparency here, and I look forward to this level of openness in the future with this game. Actually being showing what is happening and what they are doing to fix it really helps us to understand what is going on behind the scenes, and also lets us know that they are trying to fix the broken stuff and not just ignoring it. But that's all from me. Like the video if you enjoyed, it helps the channel out a ton. Subscribe with notifications if you haven't already to stay up to date with all my latest videos as soon as they go live. I'll be covering all Halo news, big or small, so you'll want to keep up with the channel. I've also got my Twitter in the description, so be sure to go follow me on there. Make sure you also comment down below with your thoughts and opinions on this update, as I like to hear what you all have to say. I'd like to thank you all for watching till the end. I really appreciate it. I'll see you guys next time, and have a good one.